Hi, crew. So, because I already gave you your lesson today, Ivan is just for fun. And I'm going to warn you, this chapter, this part I'm about to read to you, and it's a little sad, but we are going to get through it because it's an important part of our book and important to kind of understand what's going to happen next, okay? All right. So, Ruby's story. If you remember, we ended right where the men, George and Mac, had changed the billboard and put up a picture of Ruby on the billboard in hopes that more people would come to the Big Top Mall, right? And more people would come and spend money there because Mac's worried that his business is not doing so well. Ruby's story. Ivan, tell me another joke, please, Ruby begs after the 2 o'clock show. I think I may have run out of jokes, I admit. A story then, Ruby says. Aunt Stella's sleeping, and there's nothing to do. I tap my chin. I try hard to think, but when I gaze up at the food court skylight, I'm mesmerized by the elephant-colored clouds galloping past. Ruby taps her foot impatiently. I know, I'll tell you a story, she says, a real, live, true one. Good idea, I say. What's it about? It's about me, Ruby says, lowering her voice. It's about me and how I fell into a hole. A big hole. Humans dug it. Bob pricks up his ears, and he joins me by the window. I always enjoy a good digging story, he says. It was a big hole full of water near the village, Ruby says. I don't know why humans made it. Sometimes you just need to dig a hole for the sake of digging, Bob says. We were looking for food, Ruby says, my family and I. But I wandered off and I got lost and I went too close to the village. Ruby looks at me, eyes wide. I was so scared when I fell into that hole. Of course you were, I say. I would have been scared too. Me too, Bob says, and I like holes. The hole was huge. Ruby pokes her trunk between the bars and she makes a circle in the air. And guess what? The water went all the way up to my neck. I was sure I was going to die. I shudder. What happened then, I ask. I'll tell you what happened, Bob says darkly. They captured her, put her in a box, shipped her off, and here she is, just like they did with Stella. He pauses to scratch his ear. Humans, rats have bigger hearts. Roaches have kinder souls. Flies have... No, Bob, Ruby interrupts. You're wrong. These humans helped me. When they saw I was trapped, they grabbed ropes and made loops around my neck and my tummy. The whole entire village helped. Even little kids and grandmas and grandpas, they all pulled and pulled and... Ruby stops. Her lashes are wet. And I know she must be remembering all the terrible feelings from that day. And they saved me, she finishes in a whisper. Bob blinks. They saved you? He repeats. When I was finally out, everyone cheered, Ruby says. And the children fed me fruit. And then all the humans led me back to my family. It took a whole day to find them. No way, Bob says, doubtful. It's true, Ruby says, every word. Of course it's true, I say. I've heard rescue stories like that before. It's Stella's voice. She sounds weary. Slowly, she makes her way over to Ruby. Humans can surprise you sometimes. An unpredictable species, Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens is the scientific word for human. Unpredictable means you can't guess what they're going to do. And species, that's we are part of the same species. We are part of the same, it's kind of a synonym for community or family. Humans are a species. Gorillas would be a species. Dolphins is a species. So different types of communities. Bob still looks unconvinced. But Ruby's here now, he points out. If humans are so swell, who did this to her? I send Bob a grumpy look. Sometimes he doesn't know when to keep quiet. Ruby swallows. I'm afraid she's going to cry. But when she speaks, her voice is strong. Bad humans killed my family, and bad humans sent me here. But that day, in the hole, it was humans who saved me. Ruby leans her head on Stella's shoulder. Those humans were good. Doesn't make any sense, Bob says. I just don't understand them. I never will. You're not alone, I say, and I turn my gaze back to the racing gray clouds. A hit. Stella's foot hurts too much for her to do any hard tricks for the 2 o'clock show. Instead, Mac pulls her, limping into the ring, where she tracks a circle in the sawdust. Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Ruby's eyes go wide when Snickers jumps up on Stella's back and leaps on her head. At the 4:00 show, Stella can only get as far as the entrance to the ring. Ruby refuses to leave her side. At the 7:00 show, Stella stays in her domain. When Mac comes for Ruby, Stella whispers something in her ear. Ruby looks at her pleadingly, but after a moment, she follows Mac to the ring. Ruby stands alone. The bright lights make her blink. She flaps her ears. She makes her tiny trumpet sound. The humans stop eating their popcorn. They coo. They clap. Ruby is a hit. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. There's poor Ruby. She looks scared. She's so cute. Worry. When Julie arrives after the show, she brings 3 thick books, 1 pencil, and something she calls magic markers. Here, Ivan, she says, and she slides 2 magic markers and a piece of paper into my domain. I like the sundown colors, red and purple, but I don't feel like coloring. I'm worried about Stella. All evening she's been quiet, and she hasn't eaten a bit of her dinner. Julia follows my gaze. Where is Stella anyway? She asks. And she goes to Stella's gate. Ruby extends her trunk and Julia pats it. Hi, baby, she says. Is Stella all right? Stella is lying in a pile of dirty hay. Her breath is ragged. Dad, Julia calls. Could you come here a minute? George sets aside his mop. Do you think she's okay, Dad? Julia asks. Look at the way she's breathing. Can we call Mac? I think there's something really wrong. He must know about her. George rubs his chin. He always knows, but a vet costs money, Jules. Please. Julia's eyes are wet. Call him, Dad. George gazes at Stella. He puts his hands on his hips and he sighs. He calls Mac. I can't hear all of his words, but I can see George's lips tighten into a grim line. Gorilla expressions and human expressions are a lot alike. Max says the vet's coming in the morning if Stella's not any better, he tells Julia. He says he's not going to die on him. Wait a minute. He says he's not going to let her die on him after all the money he's put into her. George strokes Julia's hair. She'll be all right. She's a tough old girl. Julia sits by Stella's domain until it's time to go home. She doesn't do her homework. She doesn't even draw. The promise. My domain gleams with moonlight when I awake to the sound of Stella's calls. Ivan, Stella says in a whisper. Ivan. I'm here, Stella. I sit up abruptly and Bob topples off my stomach. I run to the window. I can see Ruby next to Stella, soundly sleeping. Ivan, I want you to promise me something, Stella says. Anything, I say. I've never asked for promise before because promises are forever, and forever is an unusually long time, especially when you're in a cage. Domain, I correct? Domain, she agrees. I strengthen to my full height. I promise, Stella, I say in a voice like my father's. But you haven't even heard what I'm asking yet, she says. She closes her eyes for a moment. Her great chest shudders. I promise anyway. Stella doesn't say anything for a long time. Never mind, she finally said. I don't know what I was thinking. The pain is making me crazy. Ruby stirs. Her trunk moves, as if reaching for something that isn't there. When I say the words, they surprise me. You want me to take care of Ruby. Stella nods, a small gesture that makes her wince. If she could find a life that's different than mine. She needs a safe place, Ivan. Not here, I say. It would be easier to promise to stop eating, to stop breathing, to stop being a gorilla. I promise, Stella, I say. I promise it on my words as a silverback. Knowing. Before Mac. Before Bob. Even before Ruby, I know that Stella is gone. I know. In the way you know that summer is over and winter is on his way. I just know. Stella once teased me that elephants are superior because they feel more joy and more grief than apes. Your gorilla hearts are made of ice, Ivan, she said, her eyes glittering. Ours are made of fire. Right now, I would give all the yogurt raisins in the world for a heart made of ice. Poor Ivan is sad because poor Stella, she has died. Comfort. All day I try to comfort Ruby, but what can I say? That Stella had a good and happy life? That she lived where she was meant to live? That she died with those who loved her the most nearby? At least the last one is true. Crying. Julia cries all evening when her father sweeps and mops and dusts and cleans the toilets. When George sees Mac, he runs to him. I can only hear a few of his words. Vet, should have, wrong. Mac shrugs. His shoulders droop. He leaves without a word. When George wipes the fingerprints off my glass, his cheeks are wet. He doesn't meet my eyes. That's where we are going to stop for today. I'll see you tomorrow. There are happy times coming for Ivan, I promise.